Greetings, this is Kate Onder of GameZone.com. We have a great interview lined up for you, but like the fool I am, I forgot to introduce our guests in the actual interview. So I'm doing that now. I'm a professional, I swear. We have a 30-minute interview with Amelia Rose Blaire and Bryan Dechart from Detroit Become Human. Bryan plays Connor, the android protagonist, one of the android protagonists in the game, and Amelia plays these other androids known as Tracis in the game. And we got to talk to them about the acting in the game, the structure of what it's like to act on a video game for years and years, and all these other different things. Their Twitch community, which is wonderful. We even took some questions from them on Twitter and worked them in at the end. So stay tuned for that. Without further ado, though, please enjoy the interview. Alrighty. So, first of all, congratulations on all the success you guys have had in the last year and a half. It's been really interesting to watch after the game came out, what you guys have done with all of it. So I wanted to ask, almost 2 years since Detroit, what have you taken away from both the actual time you spent working on it and like the reception to it all?
Oh man, we've had an incredible time in the last year and a half. We've got to travel to a lot of different countries and meet so many people from the game. People that I got to meet Jesse Williams, who I've never met working on the game. Got to meet him at San Diego Comic-Con. Amelia and I have traveled to a bunch of different events and seen a lot of really, really cool artwork inspired by the game and met a lot of really cool, incredible people. We've been having a ton of fun in the last year and a half. It's been a good time.
And we're streaming on Twitch, which I never would have guessed would be what we were doing. But it's amazing, and I'm having so much fun.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, you guys weren't doing that before the game came out. So what changed that? What made you guys want to get into that? And it's become a fairly regular thing. So is that a pretty important part of your life now?
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
We have been streaming for about 20 months. I started maybe a month or two before Detroit came out. I streamed Heavy Rain to understand all of the tech and made sure I, had some idea of what was going on. Of course, everything falls apart when you're doing live streaming. You're always going to run into some kind of tech issue, but got the basic gist of it. I had been at E3 for 2 years watching the trailers, the announcements, seeing people play the demo at the event, and was completely NDA'd about the project, couldn't talk to anybody about it. So for years, I was very excited to see how people would respond to the game, and Twitch offered a really, really unique opportunity for me to see people respond to the game in real time as they were playing it. So my original plan was just to use Twitch as an opportunity to basically sit in the back of the theater and watch people watch the movie, if that makes sense, see how it's received and what parts of the game really were effective and not. And then I realized it could be an opportunity to share a behind the scenes point of view on what's different about performance capture. It's kind of an unknown, everybody has an idea of what they think it might be like based off behind the scenes footage of Andy Serkis for Lord of the Rings or something. And so I really wanted to get to share our experience working on it because I knew I'd play through every possible branch because I had to see how it all went in there after so many years. And then when everybody was so responsive to it and really enjoyed it, and then we started building this community up, and just in our first playthrough of Detroit alone, the Twitch thing multiplied in size over and over to the point where we had 16,000 concurrent viewers for the finale, and it was just this thing that I was nervous and intimidated to try turned into the most fun I was having, and now here we are a year and a half later.
That's awesome. I mean, there are a lot of actors who have kind of grown into being very, what's the word? Communicative with their fans and stuff. Like Roger Clark was in Red Dead Redemption 2, and he was in total silence for 5 years on that game, and now he's completely transformed into
Roger is out of the bag.
Yeah, honestly. Did you guys see he was at the Star Wars premiere the other night?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so cool.
We
So
love
it's
Roger.
really,
He's a good
He
dude.
played some Red Dead with us on our
yeah, I
stream.
watched that.
Did you?
Yeah, yeah.
I was like,
Uh,
dude, you need to. I was like, I think Rod. I mean, he's got a YouTube channel, but I think people would love to watch him play Red Dead live on Twitch or
oh, for
something.
sure. Yeah.
He annihilated your character.
Yeah, he just destroyed Jimbo in a.
He was like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
so it's always good to see like stuff like that where people just kind of, go beyond just being an actor and like, I think in movies and people are the movie star and then you don't really hear much about them connecting with their fans outside of maybe some conventions, but you guys have kind of broken down that barrier and found something new, which is really cool. Um,
Definitely. I mean, I think I was a little intimidated by it in the very beginning because you have no idea what it's going to be like to, to live stream something for 3 hours straight. Like
it's
how many,
very vulnerable."
yeah, how many people are
Sure.
like live streaming themselves for so many hours out of a week? But when we met all of these people online that are so overwhelmingly positive and creative, and then to get to meet them at events and things, it really has gotten to a point where it's like, now we look at the chat and half of the people as they flow through the chat are subscribers and stuff. We know them, like we've met them at events or multiple events at this point. So it really does feel like a family. It's awesome.
yeah, it's really cool. Um, so for the game, I wanted to ask some questions. I know it's been probably a long time since you've worked on it. When did you guys like wrap up on that? When was your last day?
Oh man, it was. We can tell you with some certainty because we got
Yeah.
engaged right after.
Oh, wow.
So it was May,
2017?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Final
So
answer.
about a year before the game came out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I wasn't sure when the game was gonna be. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 2017 we finished
Yeah.
after
Okay.
about 2.5 years. Yeah.
So your memory hopefully isn't too fuzzy, but I'll try to ask some questions and maybe you can answer them. Um, how much of the story did you guys know when you came onto the project? It was in development for quite some time, and I know with a lot of video games, you come on, there is a story, but it's not really complete yet. So how much did you know?
I think that much of the story was locked because the trouble with a branching narrative is that you've really got to know where you're going with it or you get lost fast, right? So I think that the entire team knew the branching and all the different endings, the different acts, the structure of the chapters, but I had only Connor's scenes and only Connor's scenes for the next batch of filming. So I would be given, here's a couple hundred pages, and this is for when you come back to film with Clancy, and all of the scenes with Hank. And then we shot that out in about 2 weeks, and then I left and said, can't wait to get more of the script. And then months later would receive another batch of scripts that I'd go back and film for another year and a half. But I had no idea what would happen with Kara or with Marcus. And I was running most of the lines to rehearse them for myself to be, off book for the actual day of filming with Amelia. So, compared
Yeah.
to the characters, Amelia probably knew much more about Detroit Become Human than most of the other characters in the,
Oh, for
actors in the
sure.
script.
Also, because Quantic Dream is based in Paris, so
Mhm.
Brian would be in Paris filming, and I would be in LA, and we'd be Skyping in the morning and nighttime, opposite from each other, and I'd be running lines with him as Hank over and over and over again.
She makes a great Hank.
Thanks.
Yeah. Amelia, did you know that you were going to be in the game like well ahead of time? Because you have pretty much you're in for one little sequence there. It's a significant role, but how long did you know that you guys were going to be in the project together, or was it kind of something that Brian was able to be like, hey, I think I have someone who'd be great for this, or how'd
Hey,
that all come together?
funny you should mention it.
Yeah. Well, the last time that Brian went to go film for the final chunk, he brought me with him, and I was, I had a fantasy. I'd be like, oh my God, it would be so cool to get to be part of this project because there's so many androids, and what a wish.
Surely,
What a
surely there
dream.
could be a place for just one.
Yeah, and I remember running lines with him for the Tracy scenes and thinking, wow, this is a really powerful character. And then later that day, Bryan called me and he was like, get off book for the Tracy scenes. You have an audition. So I went into the Quantic Dream stage and I auditioned for David Cage, and he offered me the role right then and there. And I was
Which
like,
is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they
cool.
we were going to be filming all the segments with the Tracy, and due to a scheduling thing, this was supposed to be the last time that I would fly back to Paris to finish all of the scenes up. And scheduling wise, they were like, so we don't have the Tracy. And I was like, I know a Tracy. So Amelia actually plays like a bunch of different versions of the Tracy. So you got way more than just one little old android.
Yeah,
You know,
no,
I
I
play
think I played
quite a
like
few.
3 or 4.
That's awesome. Yeah, someone wanted me to ask you guys if you would have liked to have played any other character in the story, but it sounds like Amelia, you got to like, were they all in that one club, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you get a lot of range with that, or were you kind of playing just smaller variations on that one character?
Well, I think the fact that the choices that the player makes can lead to very different
Yeah.
outcomes for the character, I got to play with very different notes. Like either it's the best case scenario or the worst case scenario. I think playing the first Tracy that had been beaten and broken in the room was really intense. Probably the hardest section.
Sure. So I don't know how the structure of this game was, because you said they kind of needed to have it figured out before they started, but a lot of games they shoot out of sequence like movies, and I imagine it's a lot harder to do that. Whereas in a movie it's like 3 months or so, but in a game it's over years, and you can't really stay in the same headspace as a character, I feel. Uh, when you're also taking probably big breaks and stuff for them to go and develop the game. So were there challenges of shooting a story that's not so linear, where you do have to have, like, I'm this version of the character one day, and then I'm a version of this character based on the choices, and then doing that out of order? What are there challenges that come with that? Was that difficult?
Yeah, it's definitely a unique challenge to work on something like this over such a long period of time, because you as a performer and as a human change. So
Mhm.
the version of Bryan that auditioned for Connor was definitely much more in line with what I call blue Connor, this sort of somewhere between C3PO and Data and Star Trek, who is innocent, naive, and a bit, curious about how humans work. What are they doing over there, humaning? And of course, as Connor evolves, and depending on how you play him, I consider it more and more towards what I've identified as green Connor, which is your deviant Connor. And working with Clancy was a huge opportunity for me as an actor to learn how to go deviant a little bit more, and not try to play everything so perfectly and make all of these choices so exactly, and be more spontaneous and not so precious with the work. And so I learned a lot working with Clancy that I think influences in a strong way how the character of Connor develops. And I think that it was a unique opportunity that Connor is a detective. And when you play through a chapter and you see the whole flow chart of all the different
Yeah.
possible outcomes, I did not have that when we were filming the game. I had all of those different beats and little like micro scenes on their own, but they were just like in a big Word document. So
Mhm.
I had Benjamin Deibling, who's the shooting director, functioned a little bit like the DM to tell me, okay, well, this is what just happened, and this is what is going to happen right after this, or what case this might be if I was ever lost or confused. But a lot of me trying to figure out what's going on here is very much also Bryan trying to figure out what's going on here. I'm like actually breaking
Sure.
down, the attack with Carlos Ortiz's android. I'm like looking at all of these clues and trying to map it all out. And then I'm like, oh, okay, this is what had to have happened. So there's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah. When I spoke to Roger Clark for Red Dead Redemption 2, he told me it was really helpful to know that, like, you get to pick which path you can go. You can go honorable, or you can go dishonorable, or somewhere in the middle. So it's interesting when games do that. I always just feel like when I'm playing it, I'm like, the idea of structuring this for writing alone must be incredibly difficult. And then I have to wonder, an actor who probably is like kind of kept in some of the dark, not completely, but I just imagine
No,
it's
most
so
completely.
stressful. Most completely.
Almost completely. I did not know the release date for PC until everybody else did.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's that. No, nobody wants the actors to know anything because God forbid they
Yeah.
have more information to determine the best approach.
I think I know the knew the knew the release date before you did, which is
Probably,
kind of
probably.
ironic. um, so David Cage likened the story to like a Rubik's cube due to the structure of it all. Did you kind of touched on it, but did it feel similar to that on set of it kind of just being like all these pieces having to come into place and trying to figure out how they come into place?
I like the Rubik's Cube idea because of the different colors. For me,
Oh
breaking down
yeah.
the script and identifying to colors was like a real way to understand how I could work on it in such a fragmented kind of way.
Hmm.
Um, you know, towards the end of filming, after I knew these guys for 2 years, I was a little more bold to say, "Hey, can we put all this Machine Connor stuff back to back so I don't need to be quite so, volatile going back and forth between the two extremes." So they were very helpful when it came to kind of packaging some of the scenes together for the purpose of filming. But when it comes to breaking down the script, I think of it more of like layers in Photoshop or transparencies on an old school like an overhead projector. And
Hmm.
the idea being that the first scene is going to happen and the player is going to make their choices in the hostage scene, and I as an actor have no idea and no control over what they're going to do with that. So they're going to get their outcome of that first scene, and then they're going to play the second scene that Connor's in. And I don't know while I'm doing it what they were doing in the previous scene or the outcome of that for the purpose of recording. So I imagined each of the scenes very much on their own as variable paths, and then the further and further you get into the game, the more exclusive these paths become to each other. So there are some cases where I was filming and I knew I can only be on the roof with a sniper rifle if this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And so in that way, I was able to kind of map through, like I said, using colors to give the player an experience that makes sense and feels like it's adding up, that their Connor is not just spontaneously now a deviant, or that he has not just all of a sudden become the Terminator. That he
Yeah.
kind of grows towards these things. So colors was a really useful way for me to map that out.
You guys have done a mixture of acting across various mediums, TV and stuff like that. Is there anything about gaming performance capture that makes it easier or more difficult than, say, just acting on camera? I know there's a lot of similarities, and people talk about it kind of like, well, it's not like we're way different or anything, but I imagine there are differences.
I think the biggest difference for me would be the lack of sets and the costume. When I'm on a film and TV set, that informs my character so much. And when you're on a performance capture set, you don't have that. So you rely a lot on your imagination. And in a way, the set for Detroit really helped inform the androidness of it all,
Oh,
because you're on this soundstage that has all of these lines and grids on the floor, and you're surrounded by cameras, and then you're in this suit that's really like form fitting, and you have all these dots on you, so you feel like you're in the future, and you're constantly being watched. So I think that helped inform the um, playing the android. But yeah, definitely the sets and the costumes is the biggest difference for me.
Yeah, something I really enjoy about performance capture that is not the case when you're filming with a traditional camera is that you have constant freedom, especially when it comes to physicality and your movement choices, because you're not predetermined as to what the lens size is going to be or what the angle is going to be.
hmm.
So if I'm filming something on set and I know that it's my, tiny little figure going in a gigantic landscape, you have to make a pretty bold physical choice, if any, that anybody's going to be able to see it. But if you know the shot is super up close on your eye, you're gonna have context for what's being recorded. And the fun thing that makes performance capture for a video game or something more like theater is that, as Amelia said, you're being watched from all angles at all time, and they're going to place their shots and their lenses later. So you can make a bunch of fun, creative choices in every single take all day long, and they might discover something that you do with your hand in a shot that would have otherwise been just on your mouth, and so then they're able to include a lot more of these creative physical choices that I was really happy to see end up in the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's it always just amazes me, the different takes people have, the different takeaways from actors who have done other things, because I feel like everyone has a different answer. And the idea of kind of what you said, Amelia, about you were able to imagine as an android the whole like white space. Like I've seen pictures of these motion capture sets, and they're always very blank, very kind of bland. They're white spaces, and they have very crude little objects and props and stuff. It's very interesting that you frame it that way. So I was gathering some questions on Twitter, and something I noticed was a lot of people who were sending them in seemed to be younger people, and a lot of them were girls. Let's not say that all of them were, but it seems that the game really resonates with a very specific audience in terms of younger girls and maybe younger boys and stuff. Do you think there's a reason for that, or what might be so appealing and capturing to them? Because like it's not that they're just fans, like they really like it. Like they have the little circle sign. I don't know what do you call that? The
it's a little deviant LED.
Yeah,
the red circle.
The LED. Yeah, they have that in their Twitter profile. Like they really resonate with this game.
Yeah, I mean, there's the one thing, which is you ask the question on Twitter, right? So you're going to get a bunch of replies from people on Twitter. But I think that the folks that are responding to the game the most have a already deep understanding of empathy and human emotion. And I think that they're excited to see whether it's about representation in the game or even just their own humanity in the game of playing through something that has real consequences and also encourages you to make a more human choice as opposed to a more machine-like choice. I mean, when we were filming all the different paths on set, there were times where I was doing stuff and I'm like, I feel like I'm in a video game. Like I am, I'm saying this line and I'm loading a sniper rifle and I'm putting it up there and everybody is going to do their best to get to play this badass robot. Then when we watched everybody playing it on Twitch and when we saw their responses to our own playthrough, we're like, we don't as humans inherently want violence. We don't inherently want to be cut off emotionally. But that's something that's made and propagated as this cool, badass, I'm so hard, you can't even see my face change thing. And I think that there's a lot of younger people that are already emotional and alive people that have this opportunity now to not be closed off, to not stand there when they're told to stand there and to deviate. I mean, my youngest self enjoyed most deviating, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what you have to do.
That's totally fair.
Right? And so it's fun to have like a safe place to explore this idea of what if I do this? What if I do fight back? Or what if I do make the, empathetic choice? What if I do choose to love instead of hate? And that I think is what the people that really enjoy the game the most, they already had that disposition in them, but then the game gave them an opportunity to really let that, play itself out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't even consider that. That's an incredibly insightful way of looking at it. So I'll throw it to the Twitter questions now. Tilo on Twitter wants to know, what was the most complicated scene to shoot on the set and why?
Man, a lot of the more complicated the environment, the more complicated it is to film because, as Amelia mentioned, you have such minimal props. And so you have an idea of like, okay, well, between this sandbag and this sandbag is the door and this half a mannequin is the body and that's it, And so the geography of the space was probably one of the most difficult things because you want to make sure that you're, you're interacting with the environment that they're going to build in later based off the concept art. So this is a shout out to the old Ben on Twitter. He's Benjamin Deibling is the shooting director. He was really, really great at saying, we shoot this incredible stunt sequence, and then you end up and you're in this pose, and this is what you can see, and this is what you know, play. And without him being able to kind of give me that technical direction of where we are in space and what needs to happen for how they're planning on, filming it afterwards. That was a big component of it. And, you get used to the problem of, Hank has one line and then you have 4 lines to reply. So you have this interesting little, they called it the cycle, where you go back to a more neutral position to then make your next choice from there.
I think for me, the biggest challenge was that because the computers could only capture so much data, we could only do 3 minutes at a time. And so some of the scenes, particularly with the very first android that I play, where she's been destroyed by the guy and Connor comes to wake her up, I had to do that in different segments, and going from like being deactivated to waking up to the moment I was just being murdered was very intense, to go from 0 to 60, like in the drop of a hat. So for me, that was the biggest challenge. But it also, it provided some really cool opportunity for imagination work.
Yeah, was it difficult for you guys, because the scene that you both are in at the same time, was it difficult? You end up having, well, in one of the options, you end up shooting yourself, right?
Yeah.
Was that pretty intense for both of you, I imagine, considering you guys are together?
Yeah, weird day at the office.
Yeah.
But Bryan and I met on set. So we
Not
met,
this set.
no, not this set, but we met working together as actors. And so I've always felt really safe going to those dark, scary places with him, because I know he has my back. And so there is nobody I would rather have done those scenes with, because I felt very safe and very taken care of. And especially on that set too. It's like everyone was very respectful. So it was intense, but that's what we do.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, and really truly, like, the experience of being on a performance capture stage is a much smaller crew than you'd be used to on a film and TV set. So you're going through this very heightened emotional stuff. I mean, it's a pretty dramatic game, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's pretty heavy in it, and the fact that the entire shooting crew at Quantic was so supportive of the actors and respectful of what it is that we need to do to get in and out of these scenes in a like comfortable, safe way. Without that kind of environment, you just wouldn't be able to get to scenes like that and have them at the same quality. And I think that's one of the really cool things about working on a video game as opposed to a film and TV thing, where you have to be worried about the light, the set, making all of these other makeup, wardrobe, creative choices. When you're filming on performance capture, can really be all about the acting all day long. And then they'll figure out how to, make the collar fit, or, what the light needs to be later.
Yeah.
Sure. Cam Toniak, I think that's how you say it, wants to know where you thought your lives would be. This is kind of like an interview question, like for a job, would be going 5 years ago, and how much that idea has changed or stayed the same.
Oh man, if you told me 5 years ago that I was going to be playing so many video games, I would have started up again. I played so many video games in, like, elementary, middle school, high school, and then I started getting on this path of, like, I need to be a very serious professional actor. I'm not going to waste any more time in the basement playing World of Warcraft. But and then went off to college, and I'm not going to say it was just because I was really bad at Halo 1, but I was really bad. Like, all the LAN parties, I just got wrecked, right? And so I'm like, nope, I'm going to go be a serious actor. And now on the other side of it, it's like I'm getting to catch up on all these games that people are recommending on stream. And it's really cool, because now we have this, it's like having a curated group. It's like having an artificial intelligence hive mind of people that are like, okay, based off your play style, based off what you respond to in games, here's the games we recommend for you. Never play this. They were like, they were like, Sicario Shadows Die Twice. They were like, you cannot play this game. They're like, this game is not for you. It's I would have been amazed. I would have been just absolutely amazed.
Yeah. Similarly, I never played games growing up, so this was a whole new world to me. And when Bryan first started talking about Twitch and watching Twitch, I'd come home and I'd be like, "What are you doing? Why are you watching other people play video games?"
It was work. I was researching.
So this is like, in the past year, in a year and a half, has really opened my mind to this magical world of gaming and how far games have come. Like, when you play a lot of these games, it's like you're in the movie and you're getting to make the choices that you so desperately would want to make when you're watching the movie and you have no control, but all of a sudden you have the agency. And they're beautiful too, and the stories are very compelling. So I never would have guessed that I would be a gamer and streaming on Twitch with this amazing community. So I'm very grateful to have my world opened up.
I got one left for you. Diva, I think that's how you say it, Deba, wants to know if there's anything about Connor that isn't explicitly revealed in the game, his android qualities, functions, traits, stuff like that. Is there stuff that either was written in the script that that wasn't really portrayed in the game, or something maybe you consider headcanon for him?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think that it's better if I don't answer. I think the reason why I don't want to answer is that the coolest thing about Connor to me is that everybody else, and this is where the whole like notion of the Connor army came from, is that everybody, like, I was getting messages early on and saying like, I really like the way you played Connor. And I'm like, no, you really like the way you played Connor because you're the one who's making all these decisions. And of course, he's going to bend the way you bend him. And so what's really cool is when we see artwork and from around the world, the depictions of the same character are so vastly different. It's like I've seen artwork from Brazil where this guy is looking like so angular, so cool. He's got his rifle, or he's like even like super soldiered up or something. And then I'll see something from China where it's like he's like, ooh, just he's so cute. Like, oh, he likes sandwiches. Like, it's like they have completely different characters just based off the person who is playing, and they feel like they can see themselves in the character, which is really like my like sigh of relief with it. So like there's a bunch of little moments and things that I've built into different, like literally even just specific line choices. I think that I don't know. We've been rewatching Star Wars because we're getting ready for tomorrow, and you got to have them all in the immediate, memory recall. And just watching 3PO in pretty much any scene, and him constantly telling people the odds of their survival. I think, to answer the question with some answer, that C-3PO is a huge influence on my headcanon Connor. And especially then this idea of like, what would deviant off like if you let C-3PO out of his cage, like what would he be like? What is this like human element of C-3PO? And so there's a line that is one of my favorites in the game when Connor can deviate and says, statistically speaking, there's always a chance for unlikely events to take place. And for me, that's a very like C-3PO gone deviant moment. So there's a bunch of little moments like that, but I want everybody to get to have their own,
for sure,
idea of Connor.
Yeah. All right. That's all I have. That's all I chose from Twitter. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak with me and giving such intelligent and thoughtful answers. It was a pleasure speaking with both of you. Big fan of the game.
Likewise. So. Hey, thanks so much, man. I appreciate you taking the time and for your great questions.
Thank you. Alrighty, I will. Hopefully, we can talk again soon for a future project or something, and get all
Yeah,
the
sounds good. We
deets
would
for that
love
one.
to talk to you about them when they're released, but we have two things that Amelia and I are working on together that are coming out next year. So as soon as
Next
they're
year.
out, we can talk
Let
about
the
them.
cat
But
out of the bag.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But
All
keep
right,
us posted and tag us when you share your story so we can
for
reshare it.
sure. Alrighty, awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.